Welcome to another episode of the Multifamily Collective. Today I wanted to talk about budgets. We're all in the throes of creating budgets for the operating year of 2026, predicated on the 12 months trailing or 12 or T3 or T1, whatever it is you're looking back, or if you're into zero-based budgeting, which seems really like a lot of work, but sometimes necessary. I wanted to highlight, this is not a paid endorsement for any budgeting platform, but there's certainly some tools. Reba has a budgeting tool. I think both Yardi and RealPage have budgeting tools. But I was struck today by, I think Bryant over at Visibly is doing some really interesting, fun marketing on LinkedIn, writing, I think, daily entries, or every other day he's writing something that is thought-provoking, sometimes funny, sometimes funny and true. But I was reading his second entry. This is something that he said, hey, put comment budget in put comment in the budgets and I'll send you something. And so I did that, and I was just curious and interested what he had in store. And I was reading through his day 2. Your centralized model is actually 7 different forecasts, and that struck me. And the reason that it struck me is that if you have a budgeting system where you don't sit in a room as an executive council team or an executive team and you talk about the global assumptions that you want baked into your budget for the operating year upcoming, like what do we think rent growth will be in these particular markets or these particular regions, or what do we think expense growth is going to be, or what is our expectation for expense growth? What is our expectation for concessions? What is our just an overall global expectation as it relates to some of the fundamental drivers of a budget? If you don't sit in a room and do that, here's what happens. You get 7 different, or in the case of Bryant's story, so 7 different VPs that have different methodologies or ways that they think about budgeting, whether it be renewal on the renewal side or the new lease pricing side, or how they manage expenses. You're just going to get 7 different versions of that. And if you're using an old school Excel model, you run the risk of people overwriting formulas. You run all kinds of risk when you do it that way. But what was interesting to me is that this is probably more commonplace than you would imagine. I think I've worked in 4 or 5 different property management firms over the years. And prior to present day, where you had technology, where you actually have these systems baked in and you don't run the risk of overwriting, we used to do it in Excel spreadsheets. And I think even prior to that, there were some other kinds of models that we used to create budgets for the calendar year. But today, what's interesting to me is even with technology, even with some templated or boilerplate templates that actually help you navigate the budget season, you still run the risk of having different logic in the room when you're creating the budgets. And it's, I believe, incumbent upon leadership in an organization to understand that there is a budgeting process and that it includes all voices. Brian's very intentional about laying out the fact that there is a layer of budgeting that happens at the site team level. On the ground, there are things that they are responsible for there. Then there is a layer that is the responsibility of the regional manager and the VPs in your organization. Very clear responsibility as it relates to some of the drivers in a budget model. And then a third layer would be the C-suite, or the people who are actually responsible for reporting out to investors or equity partners. And that team is tasked with really teasing out the assumptions, stretching, bending, scenario planning the assumptions that this second layer team put in the budgets. That doesn't exist in many organizations. It doesn't happen that way. It's not a collaborative effort. It generally stops somewhere around the SVP/asset management level. Budgets get produced. Owners either like them or they don't, and then they force play a particular growth number or particular expense growth number. And then they tell you that's what you're going to do for the upcoming year. Whereas if you just did a collaborative approach where everybody got their piece of the budget done, and then you came together as a collective and you argued, you fussed, you fought for what you believed the upcoming year was going to be, then you would have a better shot at potentially hitting the budget that you create instead of doing it in isolation. I know many groups, the owner thinks they know, or the capital partner thinks they know. They just know this is what it's supposed to do. They have no intel from the ground. They have no intel from middle management, or the intel that they do have is sometimes just being told what they want to hear, or sometimes it's just somebody's opinion that's not done in collective, it's done in isolation. So my encouragement to you today is that budgets are a team effort. They're a collective effort. If you want to have some shot at hitting your numbers, you have to do it with the collective. That's it. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon.